All right. Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Cool Zone. this is a uh, this is a podcast. This is kind of something I've been working on for about past 2 years now, as I've been diving into a lot of leftist and socialist theory, and some weird religiosity on my part. Um, I'll introduce myself. I guess I'm Thomas to you, Thomas Langston. I guess it's a persona or something that's kind of come out of this period. It works well for me, and it kind of is protective in this time where we're entering the cool zone of history, right? Kind of entering into another Red Scare, a possible Cold War with China. Apparently Antifa is now, that verb that means anti-fascist is now illegal. So well, I guess I might get sent to Gitmo before this thing really gets undergoing. A bit about me. I've done a course or two in political economy. I've done some stuff about podcasting and dipped my toe into writing and getting published elsewhere. I'm like a late teenager, I guess. I'm sure you could probably fucking hear that. This is a podcast. Yeah, duh. There's no video here, and if the audio sucks, that's mainly because I'm at home. I don't really have access to the equipment I'd like, mainly because I'm broke as shit. Also because the supply lines are kind of fucked up because of the whole pandemic thing. I guess I keep referring to this as like a project or a production, as opposed to a podcast, at least to myself, and that's not because I'm like a hippy dippy, progressive type who wants his fancy pant word. It's mainly because I don't think this is gonna follow the format of any of the podcasts I listen to. It's probably also not really gonna get uploaded to the same places. I'm probably gonna put this on SoundCloud, probably on YouTube, and try and figure out RSS feeds off of one of those. Um, a lot of this show is just gonna kind of pick whatever format I want it to. Really, I guess. Sometimes it's gonna be an audio essay of me reading real theory. Sometimes it's me reading and explaining my own thoughts. Um, I kind of look at it similarly to Matt Chrisman's grill pill stuff right now. That's great content. I think that's helped me a lot. Um, I'm black. I live in the South. There was a point in time where this was going to be called the Mountain Marxist, and kind of be about Appalachian labor theory or labor history and how critical theory interacts with that. But I mean, fuck, we're in the cool zone of history now, right? 30 years ago in '92, Fukuyama said that the end of history was that history was over, that neoliberalism had triumphed, that we were peaking as a race of beings. And apparently we've done fell off that damn peak, and we are currently 30 years of history is plummeting down on our head as we re-enter, so we continue to make it. I guess we spent 3 decades fucking around, and now weeks are happening where we're finding out, and that's all right. Um, but for this first episode, I want to introduce my ideology, introduce what I kind of believe, um, and give a baseline for all sorts of listeners. So let's go ahead. Yeah. So we're gonna kind of try and get into some of what my ideology is. A lot of this content won't. A lot of this content probably won't sound like this linguistically going forward. These first few episodes I've scripted really well. I have a pretty fun editor. She's nice. Um, and she's kind of helped me script these out and kind of lay my thoughts out, because typically I do much better, kind of on an improvisational style. But that, as you can tell, there's a lot of gaps in the audio here. I'm sure this audio is also awful, and I'm sorry for that. Again, I'll fix it. Um, but just to ensure that these first couple episodes get done, I have highly scripted them. And then we will leave that script eventually and just kind of go into how I want to do things, which is not this formal. Not that this is really that formal. So here's a bit about my beliefs. We'll go through these first in kind of the normal critical theory or leftist dialectical way to explain them. A lot of big title bullshit. And then we'll swing back through and understand them all in layman's terms. So maybe you want to skip a couple minutes ahead um, if you're not used to all these titles and big words. Not that you're not used to big words. You know what I fucking mean. Okay? Um, so if you're listening, I consider myself an eco-Marxist, Leninist, Maoist syndicalist. And I already hear people, you can't mix syndicalism with MLM. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I can't, but I'm also right. So we'll go step by step, and I'll kind of explain my position on all this. Right. Um, First off, I put eco first. I think I put the environment first by and large. The world's gonna flood in 20 years, and that's a pretty bad thing. Um, I don't like that liberals have been able to co opt a lot of language of the left and make it into this, like, have fewer kids, trying to do factory farming and trying to make everything livable for. No, dude, we have to protect the environment first and foremost because the love that we share for one another as leftists and for humanity as leftists, we must share with the world around us because that world is the only inheritance, quote unquote, that anyone gets, right? The only thing you're entitled to is a breath of fresh earthy air. And I should be able to ensure that you get that. So I would put the environment first and foremost. But I am a Marxist, right? I follow the science of Marxism, and that was just defined by Karl Marx in the mid 1800s. I largely see myself as a scientist, and more on that later. I recognize that Marx was a product of the same conditions that birthed capitalism. He's not the end all be all. He's not God. He's not a magical genius, but he's a man born of the conditions around him. And uniquely, Marx was able to see around him those material conditions, the way people lived and what affected them, change in a way that none of us can see because while we were born under capitalism, he was born outside of it and existed on the adjacent edges of its birth, right? He got to see it grow. He got to see it take its first baby steps. And as it becomes a teenager, as it becomes a young adult, an adolescent, he died, giving way to the next, overseer of its development, the next great scientist, Lenin. I identify as a scientist with a specific thought of Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, aka Lenin, right? Because he was a scientist who interpreted those original works of Marx and added his experiences with those that came before. His experiences in that Russian Revolution, his experiences forming the basis of the USSR in a genetic framework, right? Marx uses the scientific method to discover a new science, and Lenin comes along later to define but one branch of it. There are many other branches, but this is the one that I like. Lenin existed to see young adult capitalism reach out and begin bashing its parents, imperialism and feudalism. I kind of think of the whole thing almost like some parts of Greek mythology, right? Capitalism is this titan, like Kronos, and he consumes his parents wholly and entirely, right? And here is Lenin carefully annotating these events like some ancient Greek, watching the world get made, right? In a weird philosophical sense. Um, and Lenin really begins the first great experiment of Marxism, right? And this is all caps, capital F, capital G, capital E, first great experiment, right? And that's what's most important. The critical moment when young scientist Lenin creates the world apart from the world of the Titans, where the Chronos of capitalism is. Sorry if this is a weird, dumb as shit metaphor. It it reads weird. I'm gonna go with it though, because Marx likes weird metaphors too. Um, and so Lenin creates this totally separate world, this wholly separate thing. Lenin creates Zeus, and joins in the revolution in Russia with it. And there are many other scientists and many other creations, but the world that would follow, right? The world that would exist alongside capitalism, the world that will ultimately defeat capitalism, is that of Zeus, is that of Lenin, and it's not that of anything else. It is the time of the gods, right? For the Greeks, it's leaving that tyrannical age of the Titans and entering into the time of light, of the time of goodness and of the gods. And Lenin was the first to carry that torch of Zeus, right? And I guess that he's been a kind of a Prometheus of that. And we've seen a lot of other Titans rise over the years, right? We've seen progressivism show up and come and really destroy a lot of things because progressivism is ultimately liberal, right? We've seen bourgeois feminism in early feminist movements that excluded racial minorities, that excluded lesbians and trans folks, right? We've seen that. And now we see, even crypto fascism is back on the rise, and eco fascism is on the rise. And these are like this youngest generation, younger even than the gods, like Zeus, these giants who want to preternaturally extend this corrupt titanic era that we live under, which is the capitalist time, which is the neoliberal era. I'm also a Maoist, right? I've read many of the works of Chairman Mao Zedong, and I'm devoted to his ideas of destroying the four great evils. They must be, right? We have to combat liberalism. He was the scientist to bear that torch of Zeus and after Lenin, and to develop a socialist experiment most fully. Um, I quite like China. That's a very terrible opinion to have online right now. That's going to get me yelled at. I know this going into this. I quite like it. It's a damn fine place to live, I think. I think that their socialist experiment is going a long way, and I think that ever since the Sino-Soviet split, it has been hard for Westerners to kind of accept that. But I like them. I think that the greatest devil of the world today is the giant of neoliberalism, and its downfall will open the next gateway for workers' revolution. And we cannot, in the first world, have that revolution if someone like China does not improve the conditions in the third world such that no longer is it profitable for the first world to exploit them, and so that the issues of labor and the contradictions of capital can split the West apart. Because that's ultimately what has to happen. The West has to fall, one way or another. And I do believe in workers' revolution, right? I'm a syndicalist insofar as I would argue that Lenin's vanguard could be a big tent union, an international union of workers, by reaching sufficient mass within a specific areas that could then revolutionize, right? I think that the party as we know it, the political party has changed in its format with the birth of neoliberalism and with the birth of instant communication via the internet. And I think that we are at a point in time where what is defined as a party is changing. Right? I think that any large mutual aid group could be a political party. I don't think that that in and of itself could cause a revolution, but I think that an attached union that could really lay into labor, that could really change how people work in an area, that could change how workplaces interact in an area. All this I think could lead to a workers' revolution. I really do. And I think that they could be Lenin's vanguard. Now, in layman's terms, I'm a socialist. Yeah, sure. Why the fuck not? I'm a communist. I'm proud of it, right? That's a dirty word that Fox says that all the Dems are, all the Democrats are, and that CNN gets offended when they call Buttigieg a fucking socialist. He's not. I'm proud to be a socialist, right? Because I recognize it's not some horrific thing. Socialism for me is at its base, right, for Westerners to understand it, when workers own their workplace. Um, to understand this podcast, to understand this project, first you have to understand what that basis is. Consider your workplace or a workplace. And here comes a really long-winded example, right? And I'll probably do a couple of these. Hopefully in the future I can put little like numbers on the screen or like not use as many numbers. But here goes this, right? So here's our workplace. This is a chair factory. There are many chair factories like it, but this one is yours. You and 99 other people work here producing chairs every day. You know, you sell each chair for $10. You make 1,000 chairs an hour, and everyone gets paid $2 an hour. So I'll try and kind of bring all the numbers back together over and over as we go along, right? So at $10 a chair, 100 chairs an hour, 8 hours a day, every day, your factory you work at makes $8,000. Okay, you make $16 a day. Your 99 buddies also make $16 each. For now, so altogether, y'all are only making $1,600 a day out of the 8,000 being produced at this factory. There are two other people at the plant every day, the manager and the owner. The manager makes a salary. He gets $1,500 a day no matter what. If the plant doesn't open, he's still getting paid. If the plant's working fewer hours, he's still making cash. If you, the workers, were to produce fewer chairs, you would be paid less. But where does the rest of the money go? Because we've only accounted for, about 3,100 of it. The rest of it goes straight to the owner. Sorry, there's a drink of my water. Why does it go straight to the owner? Because he said so. This is our modern workplace. You, the worker, are exploited. Your labor creates the value of the chair, because without your labor, how could the chair be assembled? Your labor power and your labor value is taken from you and stolen by a boss who owns the tools you're using, and he owns the product of those tools, but lacks the ability to make the products himself. So why should he get all the money from the product? According to capitalism, because he owns the tools you used. How does he own the tools? Because with the $6,500 he can make every day, he can pay people with guns to say that he owns it, right? Or he can, and nobody else can do anything with it that he doesn't want them to. That's why. Because he said so. And I don't think that that's fair. Really, I don't. If you think that that's fair, then you're saying that you could never make that same amount of money for yourself, right? That you couldn't work and make more money not only for yourself, but for your comrades and for your coworkers. That none of you are worth any more than $16 a day. That your time is not worth more than $2 an hour. That chair that you're selling cannot, be used for anything greater, basically. It lowers everything. It makes you a commodity. It makes you nigh on useless. As a socialist, I believe that since it's your hands, your expertise making the chair, you're entitled to the full wealth of that chair's creation. That's what I think. That's all I'm saying here. So let's remove the boss man. He doesn't do anything. What's the next issue? The manager. What does a manager do? The manager makes sure you work and that you're producing value for the owner. But that would be unnecessary if you were all profiting off of the chairs. If the incentive was to create as many high quality chairs as possible, so that you could all profit equally, then you wouldn't need a manager, because you would be incentivized enough to keep making chairs, because you want to make the goddamn chairs. And if you don't want to make chairs, you should be able to go to another factory and make something else, right? So let's remove him, right? Let's remove the manager. 100 guys, one factory. This is, the newest offering on Pornhub, I'm told. So first off, everyone can decide how much they want to make each day, right? Instead of making one guy real rich, everyone can make $80 each every day. That's a great deal, I think, right? You're making many, many times more than you made before. You're not making a ton of money, not as much as the boss used to make. But if you expanded your factory, right? Say every 10 people you add, you could make another chair. That extra chair an hour could bump you up a pay level. So you could expand your factory logistically by bringing people into this union, right? Bringing people into this commune with their labor and with the product they're producing. And In this way, you're no longer ostracized from your labor. You're no longer separated from the products of your labor. You get to pick what you make, how much of it you make, and what you're compensated for from it, right? We'll discuss the economics of selling those chairs sometime else, in another kind of episode or part of this project. This one's just about me introducing myself, right? I want and largely expect this project to evolve radically over time. My dream, I guess, is to be like a shock jock, like to take calls on a radio station or take calls on a digital radio station, kind of like Street Fight Radio. Um, Sorry if I reference a lot of other, actually cool podcasts. Sorry if I sound like a fucking lib for saying that they're cool. They are. They interest me. They entertain me. They've taught me a lot. Um, I just, in creative writing, we think of ourselves in relation to other writers. Like, right? We think about our influences and we think about, especially when we're selling a book or we're selling a project to someone, we have to think, um, well, this piece is like something written by, Hunter S. Thompson, right? We have to do that. So that's just kind of how I consider things. I know that's lib and it's pretty stupid, but that's just how I do it. But this one, this project is just about teaching and spreading what little I know and trying to spread the things that I learn as I go forward, right? Um, and I guess we're right over 20 minutes. It's pretty short. I'm sorry for that, but, here's the introduction. Probably won't really be able to edit it. We'll see.